In SoulCalibur VI, I want you to get acquainted with this. This is your AA. This is generally your most fundamental poke that you're going to be using in this game, in the sense that it's usually your fastest move, comes out in around 12 frames for most characters. It's your fastest horizontal, which means will stop sidesteps, and essentially you can just use this move to establish space. So if you want to interrupt someone or maybe get a quick punish on someone, this is the move that you're usually going to go to. The next move I want you to get acquainted with is this. This is 2A, also known as down A. This move is used to also stuff your opponent similar to AA. The difference is that down A or 2A, it goes under moves. So this move is also usually 12 frames for a lot of characters. So this move is essentially your fastest low. This is your fastest high, and this is your fastest low. The next move I want you to get acquainted with is now, you guessed it, BB. This move is like AA. The difference is that this move does not stop sidestepping opponents, but instead it stops people that crouch. So if you think an opponent's gonna crouch to go under your AA, smack him with BB. And if you make a hard read and know that your opponent's gonna crouch, launch him with down forward B. Essentially, what I want you to do is to find a good low with your character, preferably something that's either neutral or advantage on normal hit preferably. And I want you to just annoy the hell out of the opponent with this move. The reason why is because if the opponent is either getting hit by this move a lot, eventually they're going to start blocking low, or they're just going to keep taking it and keep taking all that chip damage, as you can see there. But the thing is that as soon as they start ducking, then they open themselves up to either BB, or of course the move that they are going to be fearing, the 3B, which they do not want to get hit by. Welcome, I'm Force of Nature, and this is Top Tier Tips.
Alert. Hostile remains active.
Good.
As always, if you like this video, smash that like button. If you didn't like this video, just hit the like button anyway, and don't forget to subscribe for more juicy fighting game content. If you're interested in seeing how SoulCalibur VI compares to a previous iteration such as SoulCalibur II, then check out this video here. Alright, back to SoulCalibur VI. Remember how I implied earlier that your AA will be essentially the foundation to get your offense started in SoulCalibur VI? Well, if you have an AA like this, or like this, then you will not be able to base your offense around your AA because those AAs are really slow. I think their Nightmares and Sungmina's AAs are like 18 frames for instance. This is a 12 frame AA. This is a really good AA that you can use to just kind of like establish space in front. However, if your AA is not 12 frames or even like 10 frames, then what you're going to have to do is find some other poke to kind of serve as an alternative. For instance, with Nightmare, his quick pokes are usually going to be his physical attacks, such as punch to the face, bigger punch to the face, shoulder to the gut, kick to the gut, and kick to the shin. Alright, so for the actual safe pokes, it'll be your forward kick, your shoulder, down forward plus kick, which is like 13 frames, and your down kick. All of those are really good pokes to use with Nightmare in close range. With Sungmina, for instance, what you try to do is maybe interrupt your opponent in close. So good close range moves are things like her down A, so her 2A, her down forward plus kick, so she also has down forward kick, or stuff like B forward or B6 is what it's called. This move right here, which is a really good interrupt. So, I mean, let's say for someone like Sungmina, for instance, who has a bad AA, you generally just don't want to fight in close in general. Same with Nightmare. What you want to do is fight at range, because this is basically what their tools are really good at doing, is keeping the opponents away. Characters with good AAs tend to be better at fighting in close, for instance. If your character possesses a 10 frame AA, then they are blessed in close range combat. Even though 10 frame AAs don't necessarily have the best range, it's just they're pretty ridiculous in how well they can kind of interrupt slower opponents in close. These characters are also usually blessed with a 12 frame down A, which I will give you a warning is actually considered a special low. That means it can be blocked standing. So this move is usually just as an interrupt and not as your low poke. Before I go on with regards to how to get your offense started in SoulCalibur VI, I'll just let you know right now that movement is very important in this game. Alright, well, it's important in like any game, but in SoulCalibur VI, it's pretty much a cornerstone of how this game operates. Alright, movement in SoulCalibur VI can be as simple as just tap in any direction. Forward for forward dash, back for back dash, tap up to step to your character's left, or tap down to step to your character's right. So dash movement can look like this, just simply a single tap in any direction. SoulCalibur VI also has what's called the 8-way run system. This is right now is holding down a direction, so you can sidewalk by pressing up or down, You can walk backwards by holding back, and you can run forward by holding forward. You can also walk in diagonal directions with like up back, up forward, down back, and down forward. So there's effectively 8 directions you can move in, hence the term 8-way run. In terms of movement, you're going to be using a combination of single taps or just simply running. For instance, for a sidestep, you can end up just tapping up, then hold to go into the 8-way run. So it's basically a sidestep into an 8-way run, and this will avoid vertical attacks really well. If you end up doing this a lot, you force your opponent to have to use horizontal moves in order to stop you. If the opponent whiffs anything, then you can usually easily launch in with your down forward B. Anytime you need to close the distance quickly, don't be afraid to just run at your opponent and then just simply guard, because if you're running at your opponent, they're at advantage, so they can like pretty much smack you easily. So when you run at your opponent, you unfortunately have to guard, and what you do is just guard at a safe distance, and then, well, basically depending on if you're in your AA range or BB range, then depending on what your opponent does, you can end up acting accordingly. If they do something that leaves them at negative, then you get to push buttons afterwards. After you block an opponent's move, pressure them with a break attack. The reason why is break attacks can't really be beaten out. Their only weakness is that, well, basically that they're slow and they're commonly linear moves. But these moves are usually advantage on block, or at the absolute worst they're neutral, but they also do good guard gauge damage, as you see is flashing there. So it's generally a good pressure move. Generally, the reason why you would retaliate with like an AA or BB after you block something is to basically discourage the opponent from mashing buttons from disadvantage, since this would end up counter-hitting them. But if you know they're going to be on the defensive, then you can usually use break attacks pretty freely. However, SoulCalibur is a dynamic game, so you basically have to match the move based on the range, or you might end up losing your advantage. So you might have to practice to see what works. However, if you're the player and end up getting your move blocked, then what you can do is use this move right here called Reversal Edge with B plus G, and then you gotta play this rock, paper, scissors mini game. But you might be considered a scrub for using that. So an alternative you can use is press forward plus guard right here as a GI, and right there, and then you end up getting frame advantage and you get like a free attack afterwards. However, if the opponent knows to do a break attack afterwards, then you will get blown up with a lethal hit if you try and do either a GI or a reversal edge. In this case, you would enter the second part of the meta where you either sidestep, then punish the break attack, or just simply AA it. These examples are basically kind of assuming that you're doing moves that are just relative light negative on block, like an AA or like a BB. If you're doing something that's more negative, that's like, let's say maybe like around like -10 or something like that, then you're not really going to be able to Abari back. You can also substitute a sidestep for a crouch if you know a high is coming. So your common counter responses can include defensive actions like GIs or reversal edges, sidestep and punish of your choice if they end up doing a break attack, or AA to interrupt if you're only light negative, or crouch under and launch if the opponent retaliates with a high. Though if you're not sure what to look out for, simply blocking is the safest option. With regards to SoulCalibur VI's neutral game, you're going to be utilizing the single tap movement mostly during, like, basically this would be footsies right now. What you're looking for, right, is either an opportunity to whiff punish any sort of whiffed move by your opponent, or if you want to get your offense going, then what you would do is look for a good approach move, like something like, for instance, like 2Bs, like forward forward B, or like forward forward A. The reason why I use those moves as examples, like with like 2B, for instance, these moves can lead into like her aggression shift, her backstep aggression shift, her aerial leap. Like, you kind of get the idea. So moves that can lead into your kind of like rush down pressure game, or preferably stuff that you can basically throw out, like for instance on your opponent's block, and you likely won't be punished for doing so. So in general, your playstyle in SoulCalibur VI is going to be derived from either kind of like hanging back and turtling, waiting for an opportunity to whiff punish your opponent with a move with both good range and like good speed and launches, such as a down forward B, which you probably guessed. Or you're going to be essentially finding an opportunity to get in on your opponent and basically kind of get your like offensive pressure going. So using like quick pokes, chipping away at them with good lows, pressuring their guard with a break attack, or basically good guard pressure moves. As you could probably guess, your playstyle will be highly dictated based on your character of choice. For instance, 2B right here, she's good at rushing down opponents. That's because she has tools that are really good for keeping the opponent on the defensive. However, she's a bit of a unique case in the sense that she also has moves with good range, such as projectiles like kicking my sword in your face, having a giant laser beam, and just harassing you with a machine gun because, well, why not? She's a robot. So if you're playing like a Cassandra, or an Amy, or a Talim, or a Taki, then you should be able to rush down your opponent no problem. Likewise, if you're playing a character like a Sungmina, or like a Nightmare, or an Ivy, or anything like that, then you'll basically want to fight at range as much as possible and not really go beyond like mid-range unless you have like the advantage over your opponent. And now a major thing to note with regards to just another part of SoulCalibur's meta, if you have a life lead over your opponent, kind of like so, for instance, don't fight your opponent when they have their back to the ring edge, or this could happen to you. So, if the opponent has their back to the ring edge and you have the life lead, back off. You have no obligation to approach them. They have to eventually come to you if they want to defeat you. So, just hang back and chill.
Report. Pleasant.
Good.
A general strategy that you may try and employ in SoulCalibur VI is to simply try and get a knockdown on your opponent. The thing is that after you get a knockdown in SoulCalibur VI, it puts you in a really good position because you get to pressure the opponent in the ground in the form of what's called Okizeme ground game pressure. So essentially what you can do is employ a mix-up. But if you're like Sungmina and you have like a really good break attack such as down A plus B, then you can basically do this for free afterwards, and you can even mix it up with the vertical one right here. So if this move gets blocked, that's fine. You do a lot of you do a good guard gauge damage, and it keeps yourself at on the offensive because you're either like neutral or at advantage. If you end up doing like the other one, you can same thing, get lots of advantage, and if it hits the opponent, you can even launch them and get a little combo. Along with using break attacks on wake up, you can also do things such as, again, pressuring your opponent with your lows to condition them to basically, well, block low on wake up. In Sungmina's case, you can use stuff like her while crouching 1kk, her while crouching AK, or once you know you got your opponent's conditioned to block low, then you can just kind of check out your 3B and get a little launch combo. In SoulCalibur VI, you have a couple defensive tools at your disposal to help defend you when you find yourself at negative frames. For instance, you have your guard impact, also just simply referred to as a GI. It is performed with just simply forward plus guard, FG. This is commonly used, again, for instance, I already showed you, if you have a move like blocked or anything, then you use it against the retaliation. It actually has different amounts of frame advantage based on the move that was to be, let's say, well, guard impact. So you even get a different animation based on the move that it ends up, even based on the move that it ends up GI'd. GIs can also allow you to get guaranteed follow-up sometimes. However, you don't always get a guaranteed follow-up since your frame advantage is based off of the move that gets GI'd. The other defensive tool is, you guessed it, Reversal Edge. Alright, every time you connect this on an opponent, you end up playing this rock, paper, scissors game where you press either A, B, or K to end up performing an attack. You can also just simply guard or press nothing, and then you can go into a second round, and for there, same thing, you can press A, B, or K. You can't really like guard a third time, or you just kind of like just exit out of it. But the thing is, the person who ended up initiating the reversal edge, if you actually go to a second round, if you press the same button at the same time, then they get priority. That little clash thing you see is caused by either both players pressing the same button or both people just like guarding, but in the second round though, you basically do have to go for an attack. With regards to Reversal Edge, a character like Talim probably has the most like interesting implementation of Reversal Edge. For instance, aside from the normal 3 attacks or a guard you can do, she can even, as you can see here, transition to a stance such as Wind Fury. With her reversal edge, she can legitimately use it as a tool in neutral. Because you just press the B plus G and press any direction, and you can go into one of her 3 stances. Like so. So if you do like main Talim or anything, then reversal edge is a pretty major tool for her in general. Take note that GIs and reversal edge both wear down your guard stamina. You know, while we're at it, let me just explain how this whole guard stamina system works in SoulCalibur VI. If you hit any move on the opponent's block, such as a break attack, it causes guard gauge damage, which you can see in your little like numbers thing around the kind of like top left there. So any move, including even like a little like simple AA, BB, they all cause different amount of guard stamina damage. Once you get it up to, let's say, over 60%, it starts to flash yellow. When you get over 80%, then it starts to flash red. So in that case, the opponent's going to be possible to get hit by something that can cause a guard burst right there. So when the opponent's guard gauge is flashing red, then in that case you have to be like really defensive like so. There's actually a special meter-based technique, and I'll go over meter-based stuff like a little bit, called right there, resist impact. You can use that to protect your guard gauge. For instance, if your like guard gauge is about to break by most moves or something like that. That's basically just a kind of a souped up like GI. I'll just go over it a bit in a little bit, but you just get the idea though that you will be using that move more. Like basically, you have to protect your guard gauge a lot when it's like flashing red. In that case, you need to be I don't know. You either have to be more aggressive or you need to be more proactive. So basically, instead of relying on your guard, I guess you can rely on things like GIs, reversal edge, or just like plain old proper spacing. Also, don't know if I mentioned it before, but your reversal edge actually both does good guard gauge damage and also, well, does pretty good chip damage, but be careful. It lowers your own guard gauge almost as much as the amount of guard gauge damage it does, and you can't use it to break the guard gauge also. Although really, you shouldn't be using reversal edge anyway. With regards to moves that run up the guard gauge well, look for moves that have like that little guard crush percentage thing. Look for ones that are around maybe about like, at least like around maybe 9%. Anything that does about 9% more is usually good, and preferably something that is not like, well, unsafe on block. Unless you're going to use that move to actually break the guard gauge. When you're ready to burst the opponent's guard, a quick, unreactable move is nice to have. Then follow up with a launch juggle. Take note that the move that you use after the guard burst changes in damage scaling. In SoulCalibur VI, there's a meter system that was introduced in SoulCalibur V called the Soul Gauge, but specifically to SoulCalibur VI, there are 3 options for spending your meter. The first option is doing a critical edge, your super, by inputting A plus B plus K. Alright, this is very commonly a vertical attack for most characters, and it's used for basically whiff punishing your opponent, so hitting a missed attack. You can also combo into your critical edge after a launcher, for instance, or during combos. However, this is generally not really recommended simply because it scales down the super quite a bit, and you'll do reduced damage. So if you are going to do like launcher into super, if you are going to do that, just do a single launcher, then doing the super. But just simply like, for instance, someone does a vertical attack, you sidestep, you do your super, that's usually fine. The secondary option you can use your meter, and probably the most common one that you're going to be using, is called your soul charge, inputted with back A plus B plus K. Every time you end up just inputting your soul charge, what happens is it ends up knocking off the opponent, so you can use it as a really strong get off me move, and then you get access to some souped up moves. So for instance, you can get like stronger strings that can usually commonly end in a break attack. So basically it's essentially a string where you can even just continue pressure onwards. So soul charge becomes a really offensive heavy meter based option. Take note that your soul charge gauge ends up going down, naturally, and that performing certain specific soul charge moves can cause the meter to end up going down. Unless you're Keelk and instead it's your health bar that ends up going down instead. And the last soul gauge option that you can spend your meter on is something that was added in Season 2 called a resist impact. Alright, this is basically your super GI, I mean compared to a normal GI, which ends up costing a quarter of your total meter, so half of a bar, and it defends against the usual kind of highs, mids, lows, throws. Yes, it can defend against throws, but a resist impact can also beat out, for instance, break attacks. Like so. You can also use a resist impact to defend yourself against unblockable moves. So the resist impact is very useful for defending yourself, for instance, if your guard gauge is red and you're about to be guard burst. So you can defend against both break attacks, unblockables, no problem, as long as I have the meter left to be able to do so. Take note that missing the timing of your resist impact will get you lethal hit against a break attack. Actually, I lied. There is 1/4 way to be able to spend your meter, which is called a soul attack, which was also introduced in Season 2. It's inputted with quarter circle forward A plus B plus K. You can use it as an offensive way to enter soul charge. You can also enter it by comboing off of like a launcher or something like that. Like so. And it's basically an offensive way to, again, like I said, to enter into soul charge. It's basically in contrast to doing, a normal soul charge entry, which is your get off me move. Out of all the ways to spend meter, your number one way to spend meter will be just simply going into soul charge. You'll usually end up using the soul attack if you're able to combo into it to be able to enter into soul charge, and you'll generally just use your CE, either as a whiff punisher or if you need that little extra damage in order to, basically in order to end out a round. And you will of course use your resist impact if you need to defend yourself if your guard gauge is about to be burst. On a different note, keep in mind though that some characters can have pretty unique CEs, such as like an Ivy, a Nightmare, or a Zasalamel, who have CEs that have the ability to kind of parry or GI opponents' attacks. Or in the case of Zasalamel's, is also a guard break. And here's the GI, because I mean, having all this stuff in one CE, while almost everyone else's CE is pretty much unsafe on block. And also some characters have some other unique ways to end up spending their meters, such as with Geralt with his Ard push right here, which I just call the Geralt stop sign. As you see right there, it uses up a half of a bar. Alright, let me let you just know how the wall game kind of works in SoulCalibur VI. In SoulCalibur VI, you are allowed to get up to 2 wall splats in the combo, like so, for example. And you can just like do a little juggle or something like that. So what you need to do is just try and find like different moves, see how they wall splat, see what kind of like follow-ups you can get off them, because the different wall splats can get different kind of like follow-ups. Just as an example, down forward bead usually wall splats like pretty easily. If you, let's say for instance, you do more than 2 wall splats, then it stops wall splitting. So yeah, you see what combos you can get based off of 2 wall splats. And now another thing that's pretty unique to SoulCalibur VI, a lot of characters in SoulCalibur VI have their own kind of special meter mode. Like for instance, like with Setsuka's reflections or Tira's mood changes. Let's say for instance Setsuka's wintry reflection ends up charging up every time you like hit the opponent, and like let's say anytime Tira ends up doing like a mood change, then she would end up it would keep adding up until she goes into her special mode called Gloomy Coda, for instance. So as you can see right there, they ended up adding these little meter things so you can kind of keep track of these things, but this kind of stuff is still pretty unique for each character. So you kind of get an idea now of how complex SoulCalibur VI can get. Alright guys, that's it for now. If this video was helpful in any way whatsoever, let me know in the comments down below. Alright, if you would like to kind of dig a little bit more into SoulCalibur VI, then check out one of my character guides to give you an idea on how like numerous characters throughout the roster, how they operate. And if there is enough expressed interest, I will also consider doing some kind of like maybe beginners or even maybe beginners to intermediate advanced guides for SoulCalibur VI. Though, before you do that, if you had any difficulty whatsoever with any of the terminology or notation or anything, then check out this video here to help shed some light on the nature of fighting game notation, because I'll let you know that I usually use proper notation in my fighting game videos. Remember, if you like this video, smash that like button. If you didn't like this video, just hit the like button anyway, and don't forget to subscribe for more juicy fighting game content. This video is endorsed by Smart Esports and Trollcoin, and I would also like to take this moment to thank my premium top tier fighters for their continued support, which I do appreciate. If you'd like to become a premium top tier fighter yourself, click on the Patreon link down below. Anyways, this is Force Nature signing off. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time on Top Tier Tips.